This is Climate Watch. I'm Zhao Ying. Welcome to the show. China has released a carbon peak action plan for the 15th five-year plan period. The plan sets a 2030 target to cut carbon intensity by 17% from 2025 levels and raise the non-fossil fuel share in total energy consumption to 25%. It also aims to ensure that all new electricity demand will be met by clean energy. The roadmap targets both traditional and emerging industries. It calls for accelerating low-carbon upgrades in energy-intensive sectors while also fostering new green industries. China plans to build around 100 national-level zero-carbon industrial parks and 500 zero-carbon factories. The plan also places greater emphasis on low-carbon lifestyles. It promotes energy-efficient buildings and facilities, expands the adoption of new energy vehicles, and aims for NEVs to account for around 30% of all on-road vehicles by 2030. What does this roadmap tell us about China's next phase of decarbonization? How ambitious are these targets, and what challenges lie ahead? Joining us now is Teng Fei, Professor and Deputy Director of the Institute of Energy, Environment and Economy at Tsinghua University. Professor Teng, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
The plan sets two major targets for 2030, reducing carbon intensity by 17% from 2025 levels and increasing the share of non-fossil energy in total energy consumption to 25%. Are these ambitious targets in your view?
I would like to say those targets are very much consistent with China's previous commitment. In 2020, China announced the 2030 update NDC on the national determined contribution, which includes to increase or to reduce the carbon dioxide intensity per unit of GDP by more than or at least 65% and to achieve the share of non-fossil fuel by 25%. I think that up to the end of 2025, China already reduced its carbon dioxide intensity per unit of GDP by more than 58%. So if China wants to achieve its 65% reduction target, it needs to reduce the carbon intensity target by at least 17% in the next 5 years. So from that perspective, I think those targets are very much in line with China's previous commitment and set a concrete roadmap to deliver China's 2030 NDC.
Okay, and one notable commitment is that all new electricity demand is expected to be met by clean energy. How feasible is that goal, especially as China's electricity demand continues to grow?
Well, I think it is feasible, but it is still challenging. It is feasible because of, in fact, for the year 2025, China showed that the increase in renewable generation was already larger than the increase in total electricity demand. But it is also very challenging because of China's electricity demand grow very fast because of the progress of electrification, the increase of air conditioning due to extreme weathers, and also the rapid progress of electric vehicles, as well as the AI, which means China's electricity demand growth might be at least 5% per year in the next 5 to 10 years. If China wants to achieve the goal to cover the annual incremental electricity generation with all the clean energy, which means China needs almost to meet the electricity from the whole Germany or the whole France with annual incremental renewable energy. So it is challenging.
Okay, and the plan calls for expanding wind, solar, hydropower, nuclear power, while also developing emerging sources such as biomass, geothermal, and even ocean energy. How do you see these different energy sources complementing one another in China's future power mix?
Well, I think to achieve China's target, China need a portfolio of different renewable technologies. So China need all those technologies to perform different functions or different roles. For example, the wind and solar will provide most of those incremental renewable electricity. Hydropower, of course, is also important, and also it can provide the very important seasonal balancing capacity. And also, the nuclear power are mainly along the coastal area of China. So, nuclear power are quite critical for major coastal demand center in China. And also, the pump hydro batteries, which provide the flexibility and storage capacity for China's future electricity system. And for other renewables such as biomass and geothermal, although they are limited by the local resource, for example, whether you have biomass or geothermal capacity in your region, but those technology provide locally available and dispatchable electricity, or more important, heat, the heating capacity for the regions. And for other renewable generation technologies, such as ocean energy, which probably will remain a demonstration technology in the near term. So the future mix of renewable in China is not simply one or few technology, but need a portfolio or need a mix of all renewable technology.
Yes, capacity is, of course, very important, and China has already become the world's largest builder of wind and solar power. But this plan appears to shift the focus from simply adding renewable capacity to also building a power system that can fully integrate and utilize it. Why is this so important?
Yeah, I think that this shift from capacity to generation is important because for renewable energies, the installed capacity does not automatically translate it into electricity generation or emission reduction. Renewable already accounts for about 60% of China's installed power capacity, and their share of electricity generation was about 40%. When in the future, the share of variable renewable further increase, the value of additional wind turbine or solar panel will increasingly depend on whether its electricity can be connected or transmitted and used at the right time. So for that reason, China need to move from simply building a large-scale renewable system to strategically integrate those capacity and to displace or to dispatch those renewable electricity when they are needed and to where they are needed. So this is a harder stage for China's energy transition because building renewable capacity is largely an engineering challenge, but to integrating the renewable into the system, which requires more coordination works among grids, generators, consumers, storage operators, as well as the reform of the market.
Yeah, and also reading through the document, I think one theme that stands out is flexibility because it talks about energy storage, virtual power plants, demand response, green electricity trading, and smarter grids. Does this suggest that China's biggest challenge now is no longer generating clean electricity, but managing it? Do you think that's a fair interpretation?
Well, I think it's fair enough to say that the most challenging part is to integrating renewables into the energy system. But also, China still requires large scale renewable system. So China needs both. Wind and solar capacities also need to increase further from currently, which accounts for 1.8 tegawatts in 2025, and by 2030, which need to increase to at least 2.8 terawatt, according to the action plan. But as you said, that the marginal challenge is increasingly how to integrate or how to manage those electricities. China must transmit those renewable electricity generation across long distance because of and also balance those renewable electricities over different time scales and coordinate the provincial market and incentivize consumers to participate in the power system. So the storage, those virtual power plants, and also demand response are all critical to cope with those challenges. So I think that the critical challenge in the future will include not only the scale up generation, but also transmit and match those renewables to where it is needed and to match supply and demand in the real time.
Yeah, and the plan upgrades the language around new energy storage from active development to scale development with a specific emphasis on long duration energy storage. So, what specific technologies beyond the standard lithium ion batteries is China betting on to kind of bridge the multi hour or multi day gaps in renewable generation?
China need various or different energy storage technology to achieve the integration of the high penetration renewables into its electricity and power system. So China is attempting to diversify various different storage technologies, not only includes lithium batteries, but also other energy storage technologies which can provide a much longer storage capacity, for example, the multi-day capacity or the seasonal capacity. Of course, the most natural large-scale long duration storage at this moment are pump hydropower, which China will further develop pump hydropower that to support the future renewable dominant electricity system. And beyond that, China is also investing heavily in other alternative storage technologies, such as compressed air energy storage, flow batteries, or other forms of thermal storage. The sodium batteries and other emerging technologies are also very important. And from that perspective, I think hydrogen also is critical because of hydrogen can provide multi-day or seasonal storage capacity. Although the life cycle efficiency of hydrogen right now remain relatively low, but it is more likely to play a role to linking electricity with industrial or transport demand, where the hydrogen will play a role. So I think that in the future, China need also a portfolio of different storage technology to provide various storage capacity, the short-term capacity, and also the long-term capacity. So that will require different solutions.
Mm-hmm. And we also see terms like virtual power plants and demand response. I mean, many may not be familiar with these concepts. Can you explain what they are and why they matter for a renewable-based power system?
A virtual power plant is, in fact, is not a physical power station. The virtual power plant is a digital platform that aggregate many small-scale or distributed generation unit or electricity consumer together, but they operate as if they were one power plant. So that is why we call it a virtual power plant. Why the virtual power plant is important is because of those resources can help the electricity system better respond or to manage the demand response. The demand response is basically the mechanism through which that consumer can temporarily reduce, shift, or increase their electricity consumption in response to either the price or the grid availability. Because of in the future, the electricity system in China will be dominated by variable renewables. So how the electricity demand can follow the generation patterns change will be critical important. And this virtual power plant can take that functions. For example, an electric vehicles may charge at midday when solar output is high. And the factory also can reduce its load during the evening peak. So those demand response provide a very important flexibility to the electricity system. And also the concept of this virtual power plant can turn the electricity demand from a passive pattern into an active source of flexibility. And in many cases, the ability to adjusting the demand is very important because of that will be much cheaper than building a new power plant, which only probably operate a few peak hours each year. The virtual power plant can help to improve the effectiveness, efficiency, and reduce the unnecessary build-up of peak hour power plant.
Yeah, and a standalone section of the plan is dedicated to the green transition of computing power infrastructure. So, with the global AI boom driving up electricity demand exponentially, how does China plan to scale its digital economy without derailing its climate goals?
I think that the rapid expansion of AI infrastructure will substantially change the future electricity demand. There are many studies to show the electricity demand from AI infrastructure may grow very fast than expectation. Although we also have the efficiency improvement of those AI infrastructure, but that efficiency improvement alone may not be sufficient if the total volume of computing capacity grow much faster. To manage or to balance this growth of AI and computing demand with its climate goal in China, I think China probably will implement policies along 4 different aspects. The first one is China is attempting to locate more computing capacity in those regions with abundant renewable energy and also favorable cooling conditions, and that will reduce the energy demand and cooling demand of those AI infrastructures. And secondly, China is promoting to use direct renewable supply of green electricity procurement and dedicated storage for the new built AI infrastructure. Third, the AI is not only an electricity consumer, but also can play a role as the similar role as the virtual power plant because of the flexible computing task can be shifted to the valley hour, which can be used as demand response methods. Last but not least, China is also tightening the efficiency standards for chips, servers, data centers, and the cooling system of those AI infrastructures. So through those various aspects of policy making, China can achieve the least carbon intensive computing in the future.
But do you think zero carbon computing will be a realistic goal? Because I mean, the plan it encouraged new computing facilities to run primarily on non-fossil fuel electricity.
Well, I think it depends on how to define this zero carbon computing. If this concept means that a new data center or new AI infrastructure which could match its annual electricity consumption with renewables or other non-fossil fuel electricity at annual basis, then the objective is possible for some selected facilities, which is near to the renewable power generation or equipped with appropriate storage capacity. But if the zero carbon computing means using the carbon-free electricity in every location or in every hour or even minutes, which will be much more challenging because of which requires a substantial improvement of dispatch and the design of the whole system to meet the electricity consumption from data center for every minute or every hour. So from that perspective, I think that zero carbon computing is realistic for some flagship project at annual basis, but it is more challenging for as a uniform claim or at more granular time scale.
Okay, and also the plan proposes building around 100 national zero-carbon industrial parks and 500 zero-carbon factories. But what exactly is a zero-carbon industrial park, and why are these industrial clusters becoming such an important part of China's strategy?
The zero carbon industrial park is simply industrial clusters, which means to put different factories together within a cluster and to systematically design the energy flow or the material flow of that industrial cluster to reduce its emissions and to improve its energy efficiency with various approaches. For example, the electrification or direct renewable power supply or macrogrid or storage or so on and so forth. So the companies within the cluster can share steam, heat, cooling, hydrogen, or waste treatment, and to achieve a much lower carbon emission per energy consumption. This industrial cluster or industrial park matter because of many decarbonization options are only economic at the scale of this cluster of factory instead of a single factory scale. And also this industrial park can substantially reduce the carbon footprint of China's export, which is a quite important policy to deal with the CBAM, this carbon border adjustment mechanism imposed by many other developed countries.
Yes, and also while the plan accelerates renewable energy development, it also stresses energy security and it describes coal power as playing more of a supporting and balancing role. So how is China trying to balance its climate goals with energy security?
Firstly, the concept of the energy security has changed in the past decades. The traditional concept of energy security is simply about to secure a safe supply by using domestic resources. But in the new five-year plan or in the future, the energy security is no longer simply about the supply, but also about the integration of a secure system of non-fossil fuel dominant energy system. So from that perspective, to increase the share of non-fossil fuel also contribute to the energy security because of those non-fossil fuel are domestic available. And from that perspective, the role of the coal power plant will change a lot. In the future, that a large portion of electricity demand will be served by clean energy. And the coal power plant in the future will increasingly to provide peak capacity, the flexibility, and also an insurance against the extreme weathers or prolonged period of low renewable output. So the shift of the role of the coal power plant will need to be supported by a new market design. The coal power plant need to be compensated for providing reliable capacities and flexibilities rather than being rewarded primarily for generating electricity. So I think that in the documents, the language of supporting role is mainly to direct that change of the role of coal power plant in China's energy system.
The plan also introduces a range of market reforms, from expanding the carbon market to improving green certificate trading and electricity pricing. How important are these market mechanisms for achieving China's carbon goals?
Those market mechanisms are critical as the operating system that can effectively implement the plan and also implement those plans efficiently. Because of those markets will unveil the price signal for investors, for consumers in the future. For example, the carbon market will mainly reveal the cost of high carbon and low carbon productions and to incentivize the investment to reduce carbon emissions. The electricity market will reveal when and where electricity is insufficient and to direct the investment in generation as well as in grid expansion. And also the green electricity and the certificates market, which allow consumers to purchase the renewable powers to reflect its environmental externality. So those price signals are extremely important to efficiently implement China's action plan. But there is also challenge in the future, which is how to make those price signals consistent across different markets. So I think that in the future, we still need a lot of coordination among different ministries and administrative stakeholders that to coordinate the design of various markets to make sure they can take their function efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, and I mean, this action plan, of course, it is primarily a domestic policy document, but it also reaffirms China's commitment to multilateral climate cooperation. So at a time when climate policy is increasingly intertwined with trade and geopolitics even, how do you see this plan shaping China's role on the global climate stage?
Well, I think this plan is a clear signal that China is serious to deliver its commitment for 2030 and also for 2035. This action plan act as a roadmap for China to concretely achieve its 2030 NDC. And also this will make China a leading role at global level that to lead other countries to implement their NDCs, because we see that right now we are in the phase of implementation. So how to implement what you have committed. I think China showed this example to other countries. And also this action plan also shape the global climate actions in various aspects. Firstly, that China will continue to invest in renewables, grid, storage, and electric vehicles according to this plan. And those actions will further reduce the cost of those green technologies to the globe. So that will make other countries easier to achieve their goals with a lower technology cost. And secondly, that China also implement this zero carbon industrial park policy, and also those green electricity and the product carbon footprints policy. Those will affect the embedded carbon of China's export to other countries, and that also help to reduce the global carbon emission. And third, in this plan, China also reaffirmed its support for multilateral climate cooperation and green development partnership with other developing countries. China's experience will be very helpful to those countries to achieve the green development in the future. So from that perspective, I agree that this is not only a domestic action plan, but also a plan will have global implication.
Okay, Professor Teng Fei, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that wraps up this edition of Climate Watch. You can find more episodes on your favorite podcast platforms. Just search for Climate Watch and hit subscribe. Don't forget to leave us a quick review or share it with a friend. You can also email us at radio@cgtn.com with your questions or feedback. And stay updated on the latest climate stories with our Substack newsletter, Climate Choices. I'm Zhao Ying. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.